Day 678 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 360,000 military personnel losses, which represents an additional 810 in the past 24 hours. Then as for hardware losses, 7 tanks, 13 APVs, and a truly whopping 49 artillery. Then we'll head across to the map and start out in Avdiivka, where we've continued to see a lot of engagements, particularly in the north, with this example of an abandoned Russian infantry fighting vehicle that was shortly thereafter taken out by means of a Ukrainian drone-dropped munition to ensure it was not recoverable by Russian forces later on. And so in terms of a refresh on this northern flank, Russia has not made any advancements into the coke plant, as is still controlled by the AFU. And due to Russia's inability to take the Avdiivka town center over their massive 3-month campaign, they now seek to put focus on extending positions far in the north and the south, which tends to have the effect of expanding their Avdiivka front line from the previous 20 kilometers or 12 miles to about 30 kilometers or 20 miles, which can quickly become quite resource intensive for them, as they continue to choose to perform these vulnerable salient moves into the north and south, which can add to additional unwanted exposure from the likes of AFU drones and artillery shells. Then, somewhere in the east, a Russian Buk M2 air defense system was precisely hit by a GIMLARS HIMARS strike. And these ones are the Transporter Erector Launcher and Radar systems, aka the TELAR systems, which is an all-in-one platform, making it great for mobility, but conversely not so great for a loss, as it's a single air defense platform target that can be taken out all in one go. Oh, and just in terms of location for this one, it was well east of the Donetsk city and even Makivka, so a bit further over there, about 40 kilometers or about 25 miles behind the front lines. Then, also in the east, there was the destruction of 3 Russian Mr. S SPGs, 2 of which were pretty close to one another, perhaps attempting to hide in their stationary positions. But then also there was 3 Russian BM-21 Grad 122mm multiple launch rocket systems, also 1 Strela 10 air defense system, and 1 BM-27 Uragan 222mm multiple launch rocket system destroyed by the AFU as well. And all evidence exists of this in a single long-form piece of footage that really shows Ukraine becoming quite adept at drone or aerial reconnaissance, with utilizing quite a decent mapping out of the battle space in terms of their capabilities now. Then, also, in a similar fashion, we saw Ukraine's Omega unit destroy a stockpile of Russian TM-62 anti-tank mines in the southern direction. And then, not to be left out of the mix, a Ukrainian FPV munition, which hit the rear of a Russian T-72 main battle tank, causing an immediate cook-off. And so once again, I'll say, I never show all of the daily hardware destructions, that would just take too long. Instead, I show a few of the main ones, as I keep things mostly relevant to the larger map at hand. Then, just briefly, we'll move across to Zaporizhia, as Russia restored some positions west of Robotyne, after initially losing them for a short period of time. And it's an interesting frontline position, as it's at least a couple of 100 kilometers from the Russian mainland, which therefore has a tendency to make it harder for the Russian war machine to support militarily. Then briefly, just for a moment, to Kherson, as there was a fire after explosions on the left bank at Russian-occupied Oleshki. Then we move to Crimea, as although the following information is not the most recent update, it is fresh news in terms of Ukrainian naval drone capability, as the Ukrainian SBU just released some footage of their drones, which are evidently now capable of firing missiles. As this video shows the drones attacking Russian naval vessels in occupied Sevastopol. So that's terrifying for Russia. And is certainly a new Ukrainian counteracting methodology to Russia's former counteracting efforts to stop Ukrainian sea drones from ramming right into one of their naval vessels. And so far, it's been suggested that this upgrade is in fact an RPO-A Shmel rocket-propelled infantry flamethrower, which is a self-contained tube-shaped launcher that operates much like the Law or NLAW anti-tank launchers. And it's a surprisingly lightweight device to use, with a 12-pound payload, and is comparable to the blast effects of a 155mm artillery shell, making them seemingly quite fit for purpose, as far as we know. Then we'll move across to some news for today. So Canada has announced that it is going to supply a NASAMS air defense system to Ukraine, along with the missiles as well. And the introduction of NASAMS sent from other nations into Ukraine with their advanced targeting and radar technology has been effective in intercepting and destroying a variety of aerial threats, including cruise missiles, drones, and aircraft, thereby significantly bolstering Ukraine's ability to protect its key infrastructure and civilian areas from aerial attacks. Then in some other news, there's been a number of reports now suggesting that India is now delivering 155mm artillery shells to Ukraine. And although this hasn't officially been stated, with India largely maintaining a stance of neutrality in this conflict, still, we've come across this footage of Ukrainian forces using a Polish-supplied Crab howitzer loaded with 155mm shells that appear to be of Indian origin. And so, given India's sizable defense sector and its status as a major player in the global arms market, also noting that India manufactures NATO standard 155mm shells, it is reasonable to infer that India produces a substantial quantity of these shells, although exact figures aren't readily available in the public domain. Either way, it's a welcome bump for Ukraine. Then in some other news, a Czech company named STV Group is preparing to commence production of 155mm artillery ammunition for Ukraine, as the company already produces 122mm shells for Ukraine. Also, the company is expected to have a production capacity of up to 150,000 shells per annum, but also a view by the STV Group to double that level of production later on. And so ultimately, in 6 to 12 months, we're going to see Ukraine have all the shells they almost really need. However, during this ramp-up phase, even right now, we will more and more start to see the positive effects of that as the earlier weeks and months go by, with many Western nations also, of course, ramping up production in support of Ukraine. Then moving across to some other news, so some recent analysis suggests that the Russian economy is getting needlessly paralyzed in multiple sectors as Putin is cannibalizing state-owned firms. Now, it's not really a stretch at all to expect this, as this simply means that Russia is utilizing the resources and assets of state-owned enterprises, which involves redirecting funds, materials, and other resources from these companies to support the war, at the expense of the long-term health and viability of these companies and the Russian economy at large, as actions like these will undermine operational efficiency, profitability, and future development, further straining the economy in the process. Truly a domino effect in the making. Then moving on to something a little bit lighter today, so here's what we might call a Ukrainian soldier using the Force, or a Lord of the Drones operator, whisking away a drone to its beloved destination. Then moving across to a quick funny two-parter to round off the video today. So Putin has had a number of end-of-year or start-of-year speeches recently, holding on to the classic narrative of the Russian military enjoying all sorts of success, even though it's gone on much longer than the initially planned 3-day special military operation. But what's even more confusingly fantastical are the claims from Putin in a separate meeting where he stated that Russia's armed forces are becoming so capable and so ready to use modern means of armed combat that no other army in the world is ready or able to do so. And first of all, I think he's confusing meat waves with the most modern means of armed combat. But also, in classic paranoid Putin fashion, everybody's masked up except for him. But what you may notice even more drastically is the appearance or health of this guy now. He actually looks 10 years older in this footage, all of a sudden. Wouldn't you agree? And I genuinely suggest that the reason for his droopy or very gravity-affected looking cheeks is due to a missed or soon-to-be upcoming Botox refiller appointment that will once again give him that rejuvenated and shiny-faced look. Just like how this photo shows, which is from just a few months back. But watch out, Putin, because you are chasing your tail with that stuff. Just making you look more unnaturally deformed with each and every reapplication. So, no gracefully aging for this guy. So, that will have to be it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment. I do appreciate all of that support and more. And I really do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.